Good evening once again. For the last part of our conference today, we'll use English. Therefore, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to also be the moderator of the third panel of the International Conference Women MPs in Romania and Promoting Gender Equality as National Commitment, debating a very important topic for today, the future of gender equality in Romania. And I would like to welcome the in-person and online presence of their excellencies, the ambassadors, and the other official representatives of the foreign diplomatic missions to Romania. The first distinguished guest invited to take the floor today is His Excellency, Mr. Hiroshi Ueda, the ambassador of Japan to Romania, who will read the message of Honorable Yuriko Koike, the governor of the Tokyo Metropolitan area. Please.
Good afternoon. I'm Hiroshi Ueda, Japanese ambassador to Romania. First of all, I'd like to express my heartfelt congratulations on this significant international conference. The message from the governor of Tokyo Metropolitan government, Ms. Koike Yuriko, is in Romanian, so I read it. Către Alina Gorghiu, președinte ad interim al Senatului României. Mă simt foarte onorată să primesc invitația de participare la Women MPs in Romania and Promoting Gender Equality as National Commitment. Consider că participarea femeilor în procesul decizional din domenii precum politica, economia sau activitățile regionale va oferi societății o perspectivă mai variată, care va determina creșterea productivității. Acest lucru este foarte important în vederea realizării unui viitor mai bun, atât pentru bărbații, cât și pentru femei în care oamenii strălucesc. Îmi exprim respectul pentru țara dumneavoastră, care ia măsuri avansate în vederea materializării egalității de gen, precum adoptarea proiectului de lege privind sistemul de cote. În Tokyo implementăm măsuri pentru îndeplinirea diversității și armoniei susținute și în cadrul Jocurilor Olimpice și Paralimpice 2020 din Tokyo. Voi continua să promovez implicarea femeilor în procesul decizional, cum ar fi introducerea sistemului de cote în Consiliul Metropolitan Tokyo. De asemenea, intenționez să modific denumirea concediu de maternitate ca de impresia învoirii de la serviciu în munca de maternitate. Consider că acest lucru va determina schimbarea mentalității sociale și că atât femeile cât și bărbații vor putea munci liniștiți, fiind promovat în mediul în care este respectată importanța creșterii copiilor. Îmi exprim speranța că prin intermediul acestei conferințe internaționale se vor multiplica oportunitățile pentru femei de a participa activ în politică. În încheiere, vă doresc mult succes și multă sănătate în continuare și doresc prosperitate pe mai departe țării dumneavoastră. Cu stima, guvernatorul Tokyo, Yuriko Koike. Vă mulțumesc!
Your Excellency, congratulations on your impressive Romanian language. We were very honored to hear your intervention in our mother tongue. Thank you very much for the effort. We do appreciate. The next distinguished guest to take the floor is His Excellency Mr. David Muniz, the Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of the United States of America to Romania. Your Excellency, the USA Vice President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives are both women, and they are doing a fantastic job. Your country seems to have understood the importance of giving women fair access to the position of power, where they can truly make the change. I look forward to hearing about your take on gender equality and on the next steps we should take. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I'd also like to thank President Gheorghiu and the co-organizers of this conference for hosting this conference. This is a critical topic, and it's excellent to see all of us here together talking about it in this wonderful building, the home of Romanian democracy. I think that says a lot about the commitment we all have to advancing gender equality in Romanian politics. It's also an honor to share this distinguished panel with all the diplomatic representatives who are here today, showing their support. And I hope that the fact that we have been here today supporting you shows what Romania's international friends and partners think of this and the priority they place on this issue. Now, despite the kind words that were just spoken, I think the U.S. is the only nation represented here that has yet to elect a woman the head of government or state, so we still have some more distance to go in this regard. But in the spirit of learning from each other, I would like to share how the United States approaches gender equality and has prioritized it in our foreign policy. At the core of our strategy is the conviction that ensuring every woman and girl has the opportunity to fully realize her potential, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's critical to advancing prosperity, stability, and security in our country and in our world. In 1995, the United States recognized gender equality and gender equity as a foreign policy priority, and it founded the Secretary's Office of Global Women's Issues, tasking this office with the mandate to empower women and girls and promote their rights internationally. Just last week, this office's senior official, Katrina Fotovat, visited Bucharest. You'd be very interested to know as well, she is married to a Romanian, and she has strong roots here in Romania. She met with NGOs, government officials, the Ministry of Defense, and a number of you in Parliament as well, to discuss topics traditionally relegated to so-called women's issues. But in fact, the things that are considered women's issues impact everyone: gender-based violence, economic empowerment, women, peace and security. She was sympathetic to the challenges that Romania faces. Both of our nations are working to increase women in political representation. And as noted, for the first time in U.S. history, we have a female vice president. 50% of our cabinet officials are women, and we have a female Speaker of the House. Still, we have yet to elect a female president, as I just mentioned, and we have just 24 women in the Senate, and only 28% of the House of Representatives is female. We've come a long way, certainly, since the 19th Amendment enfranchised American women in 1920, but we still have much ground to cover to advance gender equality. One mechanism which has helped advance the power of women in U.S. politics is the Bipartisan Women's Caucus, which was founded in 1977 by the only 15 women that were then in Congress, members. Since its establishment, the number of women in the House of Representatives have grown from 15 to 123, and the caucus's influence has far exceeded its representation. In recent years, it has introduced legislation, subsequently signed into law, to address the needs of women in the military, women veterans, combating domestic and international traffic of women and girls, end sexual harassment and violence, increase the number of women and girls in the STEM fields, and address women's preventative health care. In addition to increasing women's political power, we're also focused on their economic empowerment. It's not by chance that in the unprecedented 2021 U.S. strategy on gender equity and equality, President Biden listed economic security and accelerated economic growth as the first strategic priority. When women are economically empowered, they reinvest in their families and their communities, producing a multiplier effect, spurring economic growth and contributing to global peace and stability. One way we advance this priority is through the Empower Her initiative. During the March Transatlantic Conference in Brussels, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo launched this effort, which is a collaboration among the U.S. Commercial Service and American Chambers of Commerce in Europe to promote women's economic empowerment. I'm very proud that AmCham Romania was an early signatory of a declaration in support of women's economic empowerment, furthering Empower Her ideals. I'm also proud that our U.S. Commercial Service is encouraging U.S. and foreign companies in Romania to implement its ideals in their organizations. Lastly, given Russia's war in Ukraine and our robust security partnership with Romania, I would be remiss if I were not to mention our efforts in women, peace, and security. The U.S. strategy on women, peace, and security reaffirms America's commitment to enhancing women's participation in decision-making processes, conflict prevention and resolution, and political and civil life. Women offer unique contributions to making and keeping peace, and these contributions lead to better outcomes for our entire societies. We are so pleased to have such strong advocates in Romania for women, peace, and security, including Ministry of National Defense State Secretary Kocecaru and Colonel Bercea, also at the Ministry of Defense. Gender equality is critical to our efforts for a more secure, prosperous, and stable world. Our budget reflects this, with $2.6 billion announced in fiscal year 2023, the largest ever budget request for advancing gender equity and equality in U.S. history. We do have much to do, but we're on the right track. I think learning from each other allows us to better ensure that every woman and girl has the opportunity to succeed. Thank you very much.
Moving our discussion forward, I draw your attention to the Parliament of the United Kingdom, where more than 35% of the seats in the House of Commons are held by women, in part thanks to the use of voluntary party quotas. We are honored to have with us today the Ambassador of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to Romania. I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Andrew James Noble. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mulțumesc foarte mult și doamnelor și domnilor, cer scuze că diseară voi vorbi în limba engleză. You've had a long day and you will have heard lots about the challenges of improving women's equality. You know all of the conditions in Romania far better than any diplomat does. When I look at this room, I might think that there is no problem about women's representation. My conclusion is, however, the opposite. I think the question of women's representation and women's equality might be thought by half of the population to be only a women's issue. And therefore I'm delighted to be speaking here as a man, because women's equality is an issue for men. If we want our societies and our systems and our sons and our daughters to grow up in the best possible way, men have to be interested in women's equality also. I think one of the things we need to focus on is not just what can be legislated for, which I know for the parliamentarians amongst you may be a disappointment. But I think there are many things that are not susceptible to legislation that are of fundamental importance. I think in Romania there are many walks of life where women's representation is very successful indeed. And I can tell you that whenever a British scientist comes to Romania, he or she is amazed how many senior scientists are women. And that is one of the areas in which representation by women in Romania is well ahead of many other countries. But the things we talk about, violence against women, exploitation of women through human slavery, fundamentally are all components of women's life in the private sphere, and therefore much less susceptible to legislation, but really a product of the society. Now, it is not my place to be prescriptive for Romania, and I must recognise that the United Kingdom we might have had a queen for 70 years, we've just had our third Prime Minister, but we face huge challenges also. Our police force in London at the moment is having to answer huge questions about what is the attitude of male policemen to women, because there have been some terrible events in the last few years. So this question of equality for women is not something that can be where the answer is easily found and once found never goes away. We are still struggling to achieve proper equality and independence in the United Kingdom. But I'd like to, if I may, draw attention to 4 points which I think have been very important in achieving as much equality and independence as we have. The first is that this has been an agenda that we have been working hard on since the 1960s and the 1970s, consistently since then. And I think that fact alone points out one of the challenges for Romania and for other countries in this part of Europe. Because in the 1970s, you were not celebrating in the same way that our colleagues were in California and Paris and the streets of Western Europe. You were in a deeply conservative society which forced equality for women, whether it be in the private sphere or professionally. And one of the things that tended to happen with the end of communism was, of course, that the things that people had been forced to do, they gave up doing. So actually, when I was here in 1983 to 1986, I would say the issue of women's equality, in one perspective, was less of a problem than it is today. And it's a problem today because men were made to give up their feelings of supremacy in the 1980s. And when they could reinvent their supremacy, especially in the private domain, they were happy to do so. I think since the 1970s, we have been trying to create modern families. And I use that phrase purposefully. I'm not trying to be diplomatic, by the way, but the issue of familia tradizionale is not in any way a source in the UK of equality and independence for women. It has much more been in the acceptance that how women want to lead their lives, that is the right way forward. 2 other things that I would like to mention. Early years education. Huge successes can be achieved if children are in the education system between the ages of 2 and 5. That is proven by almost every international study. And it is certainly a way of breaking children out of a framework that they may have been living in with parents or grandparents who grew up in a very different society, with a different idea about women's equality entirely to what we have today. And the final thing I would say, before I shock everybody, is that good sex education is fundamental to giving women freedom and their choices and their equality and their independence. I will stop now before I become any less diplomatic, except I can't resist other than to give what for me would be one of the definitions of success in achieving far greater equality and independence for women in Romania. I spend a large part of my official life and that of the embassy working on human trafficking. And the tragedy of the thousands or tens of thousands of Romanian women who are trafficked to Western European countries, including my own, to work in the sex trade is a national tragedy that needs huge attention. I look forward to a day when the lover boy does not work in Romania. When Romanian women know that the man in the slick car, the shiny shoes and the black suit, promising a life of luxury if you'll just come with him to the West. When the woman says to him, "Get lost, I know what you want, I'm making my own choices and I'm not following you." And that will be a day when human trafficking of women finally begins to see its end. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me, and I'm happy to carry on this discussion at any stage that you would like. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And now I have the pleasure to invite the following speaker, His Excellency Dr. Per Gebauer, the Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to Romania, to share with us his personal remarks on the subject of gender equality. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, your colleagues, distinguished guests, friends. First of all, also from my end, congratulations to Romania, congratulations to Alina Gorghiu and her team for setting up this very important conference and for also moving forward very valuable initiatives here in Romania. I think it's of tremendous importance when it comes to women, female representation in politics, that we see these initiatives in the run-up to the super election year 2024. So we encourage you to move on and to be courageous in your steps ahead. I think there's one obvious and very clear and loud message that this conference has brought with it. Gender equality is crucial in every aspect. I think it's needless to say, but it's obvious that gender equality means better political decision making, it means better economic performance in the private sector, and again, it seems like a non-brainer to repeat it, to reiterate that if we don't make use of half of the potential of our people in a society, we achieve less. So it's no surprise that also Germany and German governments have put a strong focus on gender equality issues for quite some time already. And I can say on a personal note, I've had a number of strong female bosses. I've never experienced anything bad. On the contrary, I felt always well led. So it's a given, it's self-evident. But if you look at what have we achieved in Germany, I would love to be standing here in front of you saying, well, we've done it, we are there, we've achieved gender equality. I have to admit, despite progress that has been made, there's still a number of issues that we need to tackle. Just to give you a bit of numbers here, for the first time, our government, being formed last year, has achieved basically gender equality in the cabinet. I think it's 9 male, 8 female ministers, so we are, almost at 50-50 there. If you look at numbers in our parliament, we are around 35% female members of parliament. So you can see there's still a way to go. And there are other areas when it comes to leadership positions where we lag behind even further. In my own profession, diplomacy, we are still below 30% female German ambassadors abroad. And it's been, I think, 10 years ago, even below 20, around 15%, 1.5. So that's quite embarrassing, to be honest. And it's echoed and mirrored by other areas of public life. If you look at the local level, community level, there are also less female decision makers, council women than men. So obviously we still have a way to go. If we ask ourselves, why is this the case? Despite the fact that we perceive ourselves to be an open society and focus on gender equality, I think we have to admit to ourselves that there is no one reason for this deplorable underrepresentation of women in all lives, in all works of life. There's no one reason. Of course, there are a lot of men that still cling to the old school notion of women having to stay at home and having no business in politics or any leadership function. They are there, and we have to address this issue. But there are more issues and more causes for this fact that we have not achieved gender equality. And this variety of causes for the underrepresentation of women, of course, is mirrored by the fact that there's a variety of potential solutions, of potential instruments. Quotas is an obvious one, is of course also an issue that in Germany is more and more introduced. Parties have decided, for example, to have, many parties in our system have decided to have a double leadership, one position filled by a woman, one by a man. That's a start. Other quotas are being discussed when it comes to management boards or supervisory boards in the public service. Then, of course, you would have to address issues beyond that, issues such as having meetings, work meetings, and family-friendly times, not in the middle of the night or on the weekend, because that obviously is causing less women to seek leadership functions. Another issue that we came up with, for example, in our system in the foreign ministry, is that you have to not only have an open tender and say whoever applies, has a shot, but maybe reach out actively to women colleagues, female colleagues, and ask them to apply, because sometimes it's a phenomenon that at least we have seen. Women don't apply as courageously or are maybe less convinced of themselves. So there are a number of issues that you can tackle. There are a number of instruments that you can use. And I'd like to mention in the context that we have now, again, a very strong female foreign minister in Germany who is actively promoting for our diplomatic service, for our diplomacy, the concept of female foreign policy, a concept we didn't come up with. It's actually Swedish. I think Therese will maybe say a word on that. But it's a concept that sheds a lot of importance because it translates into our everyday diplomacy. To give you just a brief idea of what it's about, we always focus on 3 R's. It's about rights, it's about representation, and it's about resources. We all started out in our societies by saying, well, women need to have equal rights. That's let's say, the easy part. We write it into your constitution, but we realize that this is not enough. And the next steps that you have to take is to make sure if you have any, again, leadership board or a panel that you might invite to, make sure that women are equally represented. And of course, it's about providing resources to all parts, to men as well as to women, in order to move forward. Now, I would love to be able, again, to tell you there's this one magic button that we all have to press, or there's one magic wand that we may sway, and then gender equality is achieved. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think it's a process, it's a long process, and there is no perfect solution. Every solution that we are discussing, whether it's quotas or other issues, you might find somebody who can argue against it and say, listen, there are some aspects that run counter to it that might have a negative effect. One appeal I would like to make here is to say, listen, move ahead anyways. If we discuss until we find the perfect solution, if we keep continuing to discuss, whether there is this magic button, we will not end up anywhere. Let's just do things. If we find out later on that one or the other tool we have chosen to use has not proven to be that effective or has some negative consequences that we wanted to avoid, then you can change it. But do move ahead, and that's a word of encouragement that I wanted to give you to close with. Rest assured, Germany, the German embassy, we will stay as partners at your side, and I would just like to mention that we have great political foundations here that do an outstanding work also in this field, in the field of women, female leadership representation in politics. And against this backdrop, I do thank you for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to collaborating further with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Following, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Marjut Akola, the Ambassador of the Republic of Finland to Romania. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you very much for your patience. It has been a long day. So, dear colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to, of course, thank Madam Georgiou for this initiative and for the invitation. This is extremely important topic to be discussed and to be raised awareness on this issue. So very honored to be here, and this issue, this topic is personally very important to me, of course, being a woman. Well, there is a question posed to our panel, VADIS, gender equality. And before I started preparing my speech, I was thinking of that, and of course I came to the conclusion that we have made a great progress. But at the same time, my mind went back that there is still very serious challenges the women are having, whether we are talking about the politics or the labor market. And so we are very far from the full gender equality in Europe, and not to talk about the rest of the world. And pandemic actually had negative effect on the women's employment and the domestic violence. So there are still very serious challenges, and I'm just mentioning a couple of these. The UK colleague already raised some of them. Gender-based discrimination, including inappropriate behavior, sexual harassment, continues to be perpetrated in working life. Hate speech and domestic violence against women continues to be a major concern, both online and offline. Majority of the victims of labor and sex trafficking are women and girls, and we already heard about this concept of lover boy, and we are very much aware of that in Finland as well. And the last, and we are in 2022, and still women are unable to make decisions about their own bodies. Couple of words from the Finnish perspective. Gender equality has a key priority for the Finnish government. It has been already for a century. It is included in the constitution, and it's deeply rooted in our human rights policy. Women's rights are human rights. It is also mainstreamed in all decision making, and this means that all the public authorities are required to take into account gender equality perspective in preparation, in decision making, and in execution of policies. And in terms of the political decision making, Finland is performing quite well. Almost half of the parliamentarians are women, means 47. Currently, in the current parliament, there are 47% of women. 53% of ministers are female, including the prime minister, and all the party leaders in the current coalition are females. But we have come a long way since our independence in 1970, when we had less than 10% of 200 parliamentarians were women. So this change has taken for a long time, and in Finland it has taken organically. So we don't have a gender quotas in politics. Having said this, I can well understand that an increasing number of the countries have introduced voluntary or mandatory gender quotas for public elections in order to ensure women's participation, better participation in politics. And I do hope that such a legislation could be and will be adopted in Romania as well. We know that increasing women's participation in politics requires different kind of efforts and measures, but this must all start with the legislation and the implementation of that legislation. And of course, a long-term political will, comprehensive political will is needed. And I mean long-term, not just one coalition or government. We believe that, believe that parties and their leaders are playing an essential role in ensuring equal opportunities for women to be included in the candidate list and in supporting proactively female politicians to top posts. It has been very comprehensively, widely debated today in this room. Also, central and local party organizations should also pay attention to political culture and the language used in politics and systematically attract women into political career. In addition to political parties, we have also political NGOs in Finland promoting gender equality and ensuring its continued presence on the political agenda. We should also not forget the power of the role models and the support of female colleagues. I heard here the debating or the concept of the solidarity. I would call it also the sisterhood. So the support of the female colleagues is very important. Let me give you one example. Our first female Minister of Defense in 1990 and our first female President in 2000 paved in extremely important way for the female politicians by breaking this so-called glass ceiling. And they also, while they were politicians, they extensively supported their female colleagues and sisters. And then very important last comment regarding this. We, everybody, here and outside, as voters, bear some responsibility over this. We should keep in mind whom we vote for and why, and whether or not gender equality issues are important to them, we would like to vote for. Promoting gender equality is, of course, a cross-sectoral effort and requires cooperation between various actors such as local regional decision makers, NGOs, companies, labor market organizations, research institutions, as well as ordinary people, parents and grandparents. And here I come to the extremely important issue. Education is a crucial field for the promotion of gender equality. And the early childhood education can play a substantial role in strengthening, not only promoting, but strengthening gender equality. As we know, children begin to observe and emulate gender roles at a very early age. So it is vital to be gender aware and make decisions in pursuit of the more gender equal world. And here we are talking about, of course, the kindergartens. Then I would like to also, of course, flag the employment sector, which is another important sector. With regard to the women's participation in the labor market, Finland has almost the same employment rate among the women and men, but we don't receive the same €1. Men, our €1 is 80 cents in Finland. In some, of course, it doesn't concern all the professions. But how we achieve this, that we have the same employment, almost the same employment rate among the women and men. This was made possible by important social policy measures such as daycare, family leave, hot school meals, and after-school care for young children. So functional full-day kindergarten system is actually one of the most important actors in promoting and achieving gender equality and the better participation, women's better participation in labor market, including in politics. Another aspect is balancing work and family life. Regulating equal distribution of family leave between parents improves the labor market status of women, ensures better economic situation and better pensions. We should not forget that gender equality goes hand in hand with the macroeconomic and financial stability. There have a number of the studies regarding this issue. Due to the rapid aging, shortage of workforce, and low birth rates in Europe, including in Romania and in Finland, higher female labor force participation is critical to boost economic growth, given that we have a very difficult economic situation in all European countries. Last but not the least, it is equally important to involve men in this discussion. We need their expertise, we need their support, we need their competence, we need their networking, their circles, including in decision-making and implementation. So participation in the promotion of the gender equality should be a joint effort. With that said, there is still a big need to influence men's attitude in sharing household work and family leave. So it's the continuous work in everybody's home. In conclusion, as I said in the beginning, we have achieved a lot, but there are a number of the issues to fight for and to push and to achieve. So we need to continue discussing this, raising awareness, and, for example, these kind of seminars, continue these kind of seminars. Thank you again very much. I've been very honored to be here today.
I am pleased to introduce you the next speaker on our conference, Her Excellency Mrs. Therese Hydén, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Sweden to Romania. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mulțumesc. Distinși membri al Parlamentului, distinguished invitați, distinguished colleagues, ambassadors, I'm of course honored to have been invited to speak at this memorable conference on a topic that is of fundamental importance to my country, Sweden, and to clearly also to Romania. Sweden has a new government since October, which has identified gender equality as a core value. And the new Swedish government consists of 13 men, including the Prime Minister, and 11 women. And the new parliament that formed already in September has 47% women. It is, in fact, exceptional for me to be standing in this parliament building today and recall that it was exactly 100 years ago that the first women entered into the Swedish parliament. There were 5 of them. And today we have 47, so we've come a long way. But before I speak a little bit about how we made that journey, I still think it's important to recall why gender equality matters. It is important to recall that parliaments should be representing the population, and if the population consists of 50% women, we should also expect to see that in the parliament. Men and women may have different experiences, may have different topics and concerns, and they may see events affecting society in different ways. So in order to get the best ideas and solutions to the problems that are facing our societies, facing public sector, facing the private sector, we should indeed make use of the competencies and the capacities of both men and women. And according to studies, I think we've heard this already today, Private companies that consists of women or are in general more diverse do generally have a better financial revenue and are run more efficiently than if they are mostly male. Also, we've heard that if we have more women on the workforce of a country, that will add significantly to the GDP of the country. I think this makes clear that gender equality is not a women's issue, it's an issue of national interest. In Sweden, the increase of women in parliament was indeed incremental. After the first 50 years, since those 5 women first came, there were 14% of women, and it actually took 70 years before they reached the threshold of 40% women. And this did not happen by itself. It was, and it continues to be the result of demands from women's associations and civil society and dedicated, concrete policy decisions from consecutive Swedish governments to provide for instance, improved healthcare, to provide for social security. And perhaps one of the most influential government actions that has improved the situation of gender equality in Sweden was the decision to provide for universal daycare for children. Also, we have parental leave that the parents can split between them. And from these concrete and dedicated actions also followed a new mindset where men and women are today sharing the childcare and household chores to a much larger extent. So Sweden has not had any formal quotas, but there was perhaps one significant thrust towards having more women in political parties and in the parliament, which was indeed the alternate listing of men and women on political party lists. And this zipping method that I think we've heard about also today was in fact also ensuring the fact that women would not only end up at the end of the list where they would not get a seat in the parliament or in the local government. I think we've also heard today that there are indeed different models, different means to increase the number of women in parliament and in other parts in public and private sector. I think it's also been made clear that if there is no action taken at all towards enhancing gender equality, the increase in the number of women will indeed be very, very slow. Let me just conclude with 2 observations. Firstly, I think this conference has shown that Romania has a great number of smart and capable women. So any argument that there are not enough qualified women for whatever position will not stand. Secondly, it was also important to see this morning the male leadership of Romania taking part in this event, because men's engagement in gender equality will be key to move forward with women's inclusion in Romania and elsewhere in the world. Thank you very much.
Now, I'm honored to give the floor to Her Excellency, Mrs. Adelheid Folie, the Ambassador of the Republic of Austria to Romania, to present us her point of view on the debated topic. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Well, thank you for giving me the floor to present my thoughts on promoting gender equality. In 1966, the first time in Austrian history, we had a female minister. 1990, the first minister for women affairs. 2006, the first female president of the Austrian Parliament, and in 2019, the first female head of government. We need women in leading positions in order to promote gender equality, and we need effective and long-term strategies for the promotion of gender equality. Austria has a long tradition with regard to legislation in the context of gender equality. It dates back to the late 70s. And in 2000, the Interministerial Working Group for Gender Mainstreaming and Gender Budgeting was set up. Every 2 years, reports on gender equality, one for the private sector and one for the public sector, have to be submitted to Parliament. And there is an ombud for equal treatment to ensure that gender equality is implemented. In order to increase the representation of women in leading positions, and in a special quota, in a way, was introduced in the public sector. Female applicants who have the same qualification as the best male applicants are given preference until the 50% quota is reached. At present, the percentage of women in ministries is approximately 43%, and in the highest positions, however, only over 1/3 is women. From the figures in the Gender Equality Report, and the most recent one, we can see that the public sector has a kind of role model function. The proportion of women has been increased, and the gender pay gap is significantly lower than in the private sector. This year, the Equal Pay Day in Austria was on the 30th of October, later than last year, but the gender-specific wage gap still remains a challenge. Education and training, as well as the choice of career, are decisive factors for differences with regard to the income of men and women. The government supports specific measures for the empowerment of women and girls, mentoring and training programs, initiatives to raise the interest in scientific and technical professions such as the Mint Girls Challenge or the recently launched Let's Empower Austria Fund, LEA, that has a focus on STEM subjects. A particularly successful initiative to reduce gender-based stereotypes in the context of career choices is an action day called Girls' Day in the Federal Service. There is an annual award for women's studies, gender studies and equality in the world of work, the Käthe Leichter State Award. An Austrian quality label for companies that care for gender equality has been developed, and recently also the Foreign Ministry has been given this award for actively promoting female careers. The Austrian Foreign Ministry, and we have a women's museum in the most western part of Austria, they have launched together a joint project called Calliope Join the Dots, named after one of the wisest muses of Greek antiquity. It is a platform for outstanding Austrian women, and an exhibition and a program of events will be presented worldwide by the Austrian embassies and cultural fora. The improvement of the human rights situation of women is a central issue for the Austrian foreign, security and development policy. The Austrian commitment focuses on the political and economic empowerment of women, on the prevention of gender-based violence, and on the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda. Women and girls are always disproportionately affected by wars and conflicts. This has also become obvious, in particular, since the beginning of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. Austria closely works together with its partners in the EU. It is active in the United Nations, the Council of Europe, the OSCE, and since last year, Austria is a member of the UN Status Commission on Women. The measures that are taken in Austria to promote gender equality are quite comprehensive and manifold. Much has already been achieved, but there is still a lot to do, what we heard today already several times. Cooperation with other countries is vital, and events like today's international conference provide an excellent opportunity for exchanging best practices and for promoting gender equality together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and participants, it was a pleasure for me to be the moderator of this last panel of our international conference, Women MPs in Romania and Promoting Gender Equality as a National Commitment, enlarging on future perspectives of gender equality. I would like to express my appreciations for the initiative of Her Excellency Mrs. Alina Gorghiu, the President of the Senate of Romania. And moreover, I want to extend my thanks to all the speakers and the participants to this conference for their important contribution to turning the event into a success. Last but not the least, I would like to express my sincere hopes that this courageous endeavor will bring about the necessary changes in the Romanian legislation, encouraging and increasing the presence and involvement of women in politics and in public institutions. I wish you a pleasant evening, and I invite you to a debriefing pleasant session in the lobby for serving the dinner. Thank you very much, and I wish you a pleasant evening.